Hello. Today we welcome Joan O'Connell. Joan will be sharing her perspective on the Development and Peace Ministry. So Joan, let's start off with our traditional first question. When did you first come to St. Joe's?
I came to St. Joe's in 2011. Although I knew about St. Joe's before then, through my involvement in Development and Peace, which is the Canadian Catholic Organization for Development and Peace, because a lot of St. Joe's people were involved in D&P. That's what we call it, D&P. And I always thought that if I needed another home, that would be a very good fit for me. And the time came when I needed another home, and that was around 2011.
So Development and Peace was what drew you to St. Joe's?
Exactly, it was, yeah. It was, I had been involved in my other parish with Development and Peace, and it was going well, and I learned a lot. And then over time it became more challenging, and the environment wasn't quite as supportive. And I thought about coming to St. Joe's, but then I thought, well, I should give it my best shot and keep at it. And just got to the point where I was feeling frustrated, and I wasn't being nourished spiritually. So, and then I just had this experience. I think it was the Spirit telling me that now is the time, and that's what came here, and I was so grateful to have this place to come.
Good. So you came here. So how did you get involved in Development and Peace? Did you just say, here I am? What, did they know you?
No, it was at my former parish. There was a ministry fair,
Okay.
and I put my name on a list. I thought this might be kind of interesting for Development and Peace. Got the phone call. Next thing you know, I was at a meeting, and then the chairperson had some health problems, so the pastor said, "Yeah, how about you heading up this committee?" And so I did, and learned a lot, and found that I needed to get more information. So I contacted the area Development Peace animator. That's the local staff person, who at the time was Carl Haytu, who's now the executive director of the Canadian Near East Welfare Association.
Mm-hmm.
And so he said, well, why don't you come to a Diocesan Council meeting? And so that opened me up to the wider Development Peace movement. And so when I came to St. Joe's, I was already involved in Development and Peace, and because of my commitment to it, this is where I needed to come so I could keep being involved.
Now, for a lot of people who don't know much about Development and Peace, can you give us a brief history of what Development and Peace is and how it came to come into existence?
Sure. It started in 1967 by the Catholic bishops in Canada, and it was a result of Vatican II, really. The bishops of the Global South were telling their northern brothers that they really needed assistance in terms of poverty in the Global South and injustice and some of the challenging conditions. And so the Canadian bishops decided that they needed to take some action here in Canada, and they founded the Canadian Catholic Organization for Development and Peace. And they gave us our mandate, which was to raise finances to help support local groups at the time it was called the Third World, or the developing world. Now it's referred to as the Global South, which is Asia, Africa, Latin America, and Middle East. Also to educate Canadians, Catholics, about the causes of poverty and injustice in the Global South and how we may be complicit in that, and challenge us to take some actions in order to improve the situation, and also to renew the spirit of Lent, because the annual collection for Development Peace takes place during Lent. It's called the Share Lent campaign, and there's all sorts of events and activities surrounding that. So it was a way to renew the spirit of Lent as well. And it's a democratic movement, so people who can be supporters, but they can also be members of a local group. So each diocese in the country has what they call a Diocesan Council, which helps the local staff person, the animator, run the various educational activities for church committees. And from there, and then there is also a governing body, the National Council. People who, every year there's a regional assembly for the various areas where delegates from diocesan councils are sent. They're elected by their local members to discuss all sorts of bigger issues for development and peace, bring resolutions forward and vote on them, and also to elect who their representative will be to National Council, which is the governing body of development and peace. So it's very democratic, it's bilingual. All of our major events have simultaneous translation, and yeah. So.
Good. Now, Joan, you've been involved in development and peace in your previous parish and in St. Joe's as well. But what attracts you to development and peace? What keeps you involved?
Well, it's really a way to live out my faith, Terry. Development and peace is based on Catholic social teaching. I feel like when I'm participating in all the various activities that I'm really following the way of life that Jesus modeled for us when he was here, and what we read about in the gospel and his teachings. And it's not something like it's more than development peace is more than a organization or a charity. It's a movement, and I'm not a volunteer. Like I'm a member, and it's a way of life. Really, that's what it's become for me. It's a way of life.
Okay. Now, how have you been involved with development and peace? What are some of the things you've been doing?
In terms of responsibilities, I guess I was the chair of the committee at my former parish, and then being involved in the Diocesan Council, I was treasurer. And then I became elected the chair of the Diocesan Council for a couple of years. That was in the earlier 2000s. I've been a delegate to the Orientation Assembly, which is the big meeting of all the different groups, like across Canada, a national meeting. I was a delegate there when I was still fairly new in the movement, and it was quite the eye-opener, I have to say. I'm on the committee here at St. Joseph's Parish. I'm still involved in the Diocesan Council. I'm the treasurer again. I've been that for a while. I was a member of a trip to Ecuador, an exposure trip that Development and Peace organized with a member of this parish, former member of this parish, Christina Dreiger. She and I were on the same trip together back in 2008. Yeah. And I hosted a solidarity visitor as well. One of the partner organizations that we met in Ecuador, we invited one of the women from one of these indigenous groups that we met to come here as our solidarity visitor, which is before the pandemic, there would be representatives of partner organizations come to Canada to explain about what their work is during the Lenten campaigns, so that people would meet a real person. And so we hosted her at our home for 2 weeks, and that was a really interesting time because she only spoke Quechua and Spanish, and so I had started to take a little bit of Spanish, and my Spanish improved quite a bit while she was here, so that was quite exciting.
Joan, how active has St. Joe's been in development and peace?
Well, thanks to you, Terry, I learned a little bit about the earlier days of St. Joe's because I wasn't here then. I think it started back in about 1983 was when the first committee was set up. And I have some of the names of the people who headed up the committee back then. There was, because some people may remember these folks, Dorothy Woods, Al Pollock, Alan Jane, Paula Dugdale, Rosemary Zach, Rosalind Riseborough, who actually, she was on the Diocesan Council when I first joined it, and she was the treasurer, and she had to leave because of family responsibilities, and that was because of her that I became the treasurer. And Paul McGuire, and Regina Wright, and then Larry Martin, who has been chair of the the parish committee since 2007, and he's still the chair. So yeah, those are some of the early people. Looking back, there were lots of activities. There was apparently an annual fundraising dance to raise funds for development and peace. There were international nights where people learned about various issues in the global south that our partners are having to contend with, and it was a way to, I think, raise money as well and experience the food and culture of various groups from the global south. So it sounded like it would have been a really good time. More recently, I don't think there have been those big events, but we always do the education campaign where each year, and that's, I should go back, that's one of the things that attracted me to Development Peace as well, is the annual education and action campaign, where you learn about a challenge that one of our partner groups in the global south, or a number of partner groups in the global south are having, and what we can do to assist, whether it's to write the government or sign a postcard or that kind of thing. And I know that attracts a lot of people to that. So we always share that information every fall, and you'll remember that there have been postcards and petitions to sign, those kinds of things. There's the Share a Lent fundraising campaign during Lent, when every week there's new information that's shared. Yes, we have some of the posters here about the Share a Lent campaign. You'll see the posters in the church. Larry is very good at putting in all sorts of information in the bulletin and the weekly updates. We always have a member of the committee give the reflection on Solidarity Sunday, which is the 5th Sunday of Lent, and that's the annual collection across Canada for Development and Peace, is the 5th Sunday of Lent. During Lent, more recently, pre-pandemic, we've been doing the Solidarity Way of the Cross. Development Peace is very good at creating wonderful resources for parish groups to use in their parishes to explain the various education and action campaigns and Share Lent. And then we also have training sessions run by the Diocesan Councils in conjunction with the local staff person. So we're very well equipped to share the information. But one of the resources that they do every year is they do Stations of the Cross, but from a social justice perspective. And there's a new one every year, and it's an interesting way to share Jesus' journey to the cross, but having it relevant, because you can see the struggle of today's people in some of the things that Jesus was going through on the walk towards Calvary. So we would have that after the 11:30 Mass. A small group of people would come, and we would just go through the stations, and everybody would take turns, and it was very fluid. But people really liked it, and we hope to be able to do that again. There was a initiative started before my time. I think it was Paul McGuire actually who started it, to sell fair trade coffee after Mass on Sundays as a way to raise a little bit extra money for Development and Peace. And that's been going on for years. And we've had some very faithful volunteers doing that. I know Simon Mingo and Helena Robb have been doing that after the 9:30 Mass for many years. And we now have a big group that was selling it after the 11:30 Mass. And so these are people, some of the people were our Development and Peace members, but other people, they just thought it would be fun to do it. And so, yeah, and I think we've sent, over $1,000 every year. We only charge a little bit more than the price we're charged, but it's still a way to contribute.
So do you have any other personal highlights of your involvement in Development and Peace?
Well, I guess my trip to Ecuador was a huge highlight for me. It opened up my eyes to the real history of the Americas, because up until that time I was like a lot of North Americans, it was what I was taught in school. And it really did kind of turn upside down my understanding of the discovery, if you want to talk, we used to call the discovery of America. And that, you know, the indigenous people were here way before we were involved. And it just, I learned more about colonization throughout the Americas, the role of the church, how that affected the lives of the people in the global south, not necessarily in a good way all the time. So yeah, it really opened my eyes, and I got to see a beautiful country and meet the partners. That's what Development and Peace does, and I don't think I mentioned that earlier. We don't have people who work on the ground like a lot of other international development NGOs do. We partner with the local organizations that are there and help support them financially or otherwise, bringing their messages here to Canada. And that really is a fundamental principle of Development and Peace, is subsidiarity, that, you know, the people on the ground who are facing the problems are really the ones who should be the instigators of their own future. And our role is to help them, and that's how Development and Peace works. And that was another real reason that I was attracted to Development and Peace. Hosting our Solidarity Visitor was a wonderful experience as well. You know, being a delegate at the regional assemblies where you get to vote on important issues, it's very empowering, and so that's something that was a highlight. And also the 50th anniversary of Development and Peace, which happened in 2017, was a big year for Development and Peace because you know, that we've had some struggles over the years, financial and otherwise, and it was a time when we celebrated our successes, and they created this beautiful book, the Jubilee 50 Years of Solidarity. And I don't know if we have that in the parish library, but it's a wonderful history of Development and Peace and all the leaders that have been involved in the movement, and many of whom either were produced by St. Joe's or landed here. I have to say there was a lot of leaders in the movement who found their home at Development and Peace. So participating in that, and there was an initiative to present awards to really faithful Development and Peace members. And I was involved in nominating a few people and being present while they received their awards. You know, Simon and Joseph Mango were received an award, Paul McGuire, Joe Gunn, Larry Martin, a number of people from the parish. And I guess a really big highlight was presenting this book with one of my colleagues to the family of Romeo Maoni, who was the original executive director of Development Peace when it was first founded in 1967. And he was a giant in the movement. He had come from the Catholic worker movement, and he was fundamental in the in Development Peace moving forward and the direction that it took. And he passed away a number of years ago, so we went to his family had a party at their home with all his wife and the kids and their kids, and it was like a big celebration. It was wonderful. They were so thrilled to receive this book, and the fact that he was remembered. And then I guess participating with other St. Joe's parishioners on the Diocesan Council, because right now there are 4 people from St. Joe's who are members of the Diocesan Council here in Ottawa. There's Larry Martin, Margie Duthie, Gabrielle Dupuis, and myself. And Gabrielle, she is currently the chair of the Diocesan Council. A lot of people probably know her. She's a young woman originally from Manitoba. And she has been elected to represent Eastern Ontario as our national member. So she's really, our presence, St. Joe's presence is really strong within the movement.
So Joan, you've been involved in Development and Peace. What about other parishioners, if they're interested in Development and Peace joining, how would they go about doing that?
Well, I guess the best way would be to get in touch with Larry Martin, who's the chair of the committee, or me. And we'd certainly be happy to have a chat. And there'll be things in the parish update when there are meetings or gatherings or issues that are coming up that people might be interested in. It's a rewarding way to become involved in the parish and a wider movement, but it's not the only thing. I mean, I'm involved in other ministries as well, and I know it's a cliche saying that you always get more out of it than you put in, but it's really true. I'm on parish pastoral council right now, and it wasn't something that I sought out, but I've gotten a lot out of it by participating. You meet wonderful people, have experiences that you never thought you would experience, challenges and successes, and everybody just has to, seek out their own call, because we all have different calling and different talents, so, yeah.
Well, Joan, that brings us to an end to this interview, but I thank you very much for sharing your thoughts about development and peace. It certainly has been a rewarding interview. I've learned a lot as well.
Oh, thanks, Terry, and thanks for inviting me.
Very welcome.